Alors, bonsoir tout le monde,
Good
bienvenue.
evening, everyone. Welcome to this standing committee. We're on April the 19th, okay? The standing committee on strategies and public policies. So, without any further delay, it's not. It's a meeting designed for presentations from the public or from our staff that will allow us sometimes to go further in our questioning and comments, but no decisions are made during these meetings. So it's quite often items that will be brought back by management to advise the council in a given direction. That being said, welcome to all of you. And we will begin. Who is the representative? Good evening. Identify yourself and we'll start. Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. I'm George Woodward. I'm the president of Ferte Dieppe Pride, a new committee that cherish us very much, and we've put a lot of work in it. We're quite excited to present to you our PowerPoint and what we have to offer for the city of Dieppe. Without any delay, I will introduce Franz Bro, who will present the first part of it. Good day, everyone. I hope that I'm talking loud enough. I'm not used to have a habit. I'm a social worker by training, residents of the beautiful city of Dieppe, of course, and I work at the South Francophone district. It is the work appropriate for betterment. I have several files. One of them is the diversity of sexual diversity and gender. I'm happy to be a member of that committee. And today my role is to educate you somewhat. I will present something in 10 minutes. Of course, it would take much more time to explain what diversity is all about, what it means, the different terms, but I'll do it quickly. And I invite you to invite me at another time to go more in details if you are interested. I'm always happy to work with the community because you know our young people in the school in the Francophone South District. A great part of our district is located in the app, so it's very important. So let's start. So the first slide is really to present some acronyms. There are several acronyms. We've decided to present this one, but we use, and maybe you'll hear some people present different letters. That is quite normal because acronyms depends on the people what suits them better, but some are used more sophisticated census. They will use LGBTQ2 plus, but here it is an acronym that the community will use more in the last year. Really, that's the one that we see quite often. We see two S LGBTQLA plus. It's hard to say, but with practice, it goes quite well. The two S, we talk about the by spirituality life. It belongs to the native people. I will talk about queer, what it means. Well, it means the same thing, but it's only the person who are members of the native population who will use that term. It's a term that means a lot of different things. So, of course, in the native community, we were celebrating the possibility of having a masculine and a feminine spirit. It started with the European nations, but it expanded more and more. We see at the beginning of the because the native people, we say we don't want to forget them, but we put them last. We put them after. But in here, we wanted to give them the first place, the L for lesbian. So a woman attracted by another woman, G for gay, B for bisexual, T for trans or transgender. So
C'est
someone
personnel,
whose
donc c'est pas le
sex
même que son identité
at
de
birth
genre.
is not the same one as when he identifies
C'est
himself.
anglais.
Q
J'imagine que
is
la majorité
queer.
d'entre
Queer
vous
is an
ont entendu
English
le mot
term.
queer
You've
pour
heard the word queer
que c'était
to insult
c'était
someone.
supposé
It
être
is used because we
curieux ou
say
des
someone
choses
who
comme
was
ça.
queer or things like
C'est parce
that.
que le mot
But
queer,
it's
ça a une
because the word
évolution en anglais.
queer, by
Il y a eu
definition, in
différentes
English
il y
means
a un certain temps,
strange,
il n'y a
different.
pas si longtemps passé,
And
on
not that long
appelait
ago, some time
les
ago,
choses qui étaient
we
différentes,
said
c'était
that
mauvais.
things
C'était
that
mauvais.
were different were
Aujourd'hui,
bad.
surtout dans nos écoles, vous
But
allez le voir,
today,
les
especially in the
enseignants
school, you
célèbrent
will
la
see in
diversité.
community,
C'est
we
beau.
celebrate
C'est
diversity. It's
vraiment différent.
beautiful, and we're
Et
all different one from another. From one another,
c'est
people who
vraiment
will
s'ils se
identify as
disent
queer, they
différents ou
say
se disent hors
different,
de la norme
or they
ou
say outside the
hétérosexualité, je suis gay.
standard of
C'est ça qu'il faut
heterosexuality,
voir.
or
Puis ça pourrait être au niveau
that gender.
de
It
l'orientation,
could
comme ça peut
be
être au niveau
towards the orientation and with
le A,
intersex, asexual. I didn't go into details with all the terms. I'm sure I've lost half of it.
c'est
That's
particulier. C'est
okay.
beaucoup de différents
There
termes.
exists a
Et
lot of
exemple,
terms, and the terms are important for the people who identify themselves with
comment
those terms
s'assurer de
and
bien
how to
comprendre la
make sure
diversité
to understand
dans ces
diversity.
milieux-là.
Well, sometimes when there's
S'ils vont prendre la
someone
peine de vous le
who
dire ou de vous informer
take
de
the
qui
time
sont
to tell
qui,
you or to inform
pourquoi
you
utilisent ça,
of
ben vous pouvez
what
leur
they want to
demander qu'est-ce que
use,
ça
ask them,
signifie pour toi.
what does it
Parce
mean
qu'on
for
connaît
you?
les définitions
Because there can be
différentes
definition
au
that
niveau
can be
linguistique
different
au
between
Québec. On va passer à
people.
la prochaine.
But next one,
Donc, une
please.
bonne façon d'expliquer,
So
c'est
a
la
good way to
différence.
explain
Il y a d'autres
is
façons.
the
Moi,
gender
c'est celle-là que j'aime,
unicorn. That's
notamment
the one I like.
dans le système scolaire.
And
On
in
met
the
en
school
valeur
system, we like
les
colors,
images,
we
on
like
utilise la
images,
définition
and
de
we
genre. Et ça,
use
c'est une excellente
the
façon
current
de
of
l'expliquer.
the gender, but there are
Ensuite,
other ways
lorsqu'on
of explaining it.
commence
When
à
we see
lire Sexe et
the
similarités,
unicorn, we see
je
the
pense que ça
sex
prend
and the
une
born and
bonne minute
unicorn.
pour vous
I
l'expliquer,
could
mais
take an hour to
en
explain it to you,
2 minutes.
but I'll take 1 minute.
Sexe assigné à la naissance, c'est vraiment
The
quand
sex
on
at
est
birth is
le
when we are
fait
born,
qu'il y a une personne
and
professionnelle de la
a
santé qui nous
professional
assigne un
health
sexe.
person
Puis ça, c'est
assigns
un
us
excellent
with a
visuel
sex,
déjà
and
pour
that's
les
what a
enfants parce que
visual
c'est 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 pas
outside
non X, il n'y a pas
genital
d'ultrason qui est fait
organs. There's no
lorsque les enfants sont
ultrasound,
génitaux, donc on
really.
peut
It's the
assigner un sexe
genital
à des
organs. We are
organes génitaux.
assigned a sex
Lorsqu'on comprend
through our
aujourd'hui
genital
notre existence
organs.
et que
What we
on est
understand today
plusieurs,
and has already
on
always
est,
existed. There are
c'est
people
autre chose. L'identité de genre,
for
c'est
whom
vraiment une
it's
perception,
something
une façon
else.
de se
It's
voir,
a
une
perception,
façon de
a
se
way of
sentir.
seeing
Ça
oneself,
n'a
of
pas rapport avec
feeling.
tes organes
So it has
génitaux,
nothing to do with your
ta
genital
perception.
organs, but
Une
rather your
personne qui a une
perception.
identité conjointe,
Nobody can identify your gender.
peut
No one
assigner
can
le genre à
assign
quelqu'un d'autre
the
et
gender to
différer la
someone else.
personne.
Only you
Mais on
can
peut
know
savoir
what it
l'orientation
is, and the
quand
people
assez
can
jeune.
know
Donc,
their gender quite
petits-enfants,
young,
parce qu'on peut
even
identifier son genre.
at the
Parce que souvent, les enfants n'ont pas
early
les mots
childhood. Sometimes
pour
children don't have the
l'exprimer.
words
Dans les
to
écoles, on voit
explain
de
it.
plus en
But in
plus
the
qui
schools,
sont
we
capables
see
de
more
dire
and
à leurs
more
parents,
people who can tell
non,
their
moi, c'est
parents,
comme ça que
"Oh,
c'est ça que je suis.
for
C'est
me,
comme ça que
this
je
is
me
what I
sens.
am. That's
Et
how
de
I
plus
feel."
en plus,
And
les gens parlent
more young
d'identité
people
de genre
are able
plus
to
facilement.
identify their
Un genre
gender
aussi,
much easier.
quand on parle d'identité
And
de genre, il n'y a
gender,
pas
we
juste
talk
un. On
about
dit que c'est non ça peut être
identification of gender.
oui
There's
ou
not only
non
two.
ou non
Uh,
binary. C'est-à-dire que
non-binary.
c'est des gens qui
It
s'identifient
means
pas
that
nécessairement
people
comme
who
homme ou
identify
femme.
fully
Ça,
man or
c'est
fully woman,
genre
and
qui
it's full of other
existe.
people who can exist
Homme, femme,
other than man,
et
woman, or
c'est
others.
super important de comprendre
It's
ça.
very important to
Et
understand
l'expression de
that.
genre ou la
And the
présentation du genre,
expressions
ben ça, c'est
of
plus
gender,
qu'on
the
met outside.
presentation of gender
Donc,
is
on
what
dit
we
une
have
société
outside.
qui a
We live in a
catégorisé le
society that
féminin et
has
le masculin.
categorized feminine and
Donc, il y a des choses
masculine.
qui sont
They
féminines
said
et
that
des
certain
choses qui
things
sont
are
masculines
masculine,
et il y a
certain
des
things
choses qui
are
sont neutres.
feminine, and some
Et
things are neutral.
en raison de ça, c'est là qu'il y a
And
eu
for
aussi au
that
niveau des
reason, that
stéréotypes.
where
Un homme
Kim
ne peut pas porter du
stereotype a
rose
man cannot wear a
ou un
pink
vernis à ongles.
or
Et
wear
une femme ne peut pas
varnish, and a
faire un
woman
métier qui est dit plus
cannot
masculin.
practice a certain
Donc, c'est
trade that
certain
is
que
more masculine in nature.
on comprend que
So,
c'est
of
pas
course, we
toujours comme ça.
understand that
Donc,
it's not
quand on
exactly
voit
that way,
peut-être
but when
un homme
we
qu'on
see
croit
a
que c'est un
man
homme,
or we think
on
it's a
peut dire,
man,
hmm,
we
on va
will
peut-être
say,
questionner parce que son
oh, maybe
expression
we'll
est plus
question
féminine.
because his
Et ça, c'est un
expression is more
stéréotype.
feminine. But
L'important, vous
that
devez
is
comprendre
stereotype.
le sexe
The
assigné à la
importance
naissance,
of
l'identité de genre et
understanding
l'expression,
between the
c'est
sex that
deux
was assigned
choses
at birth
séparées.
and the
Comment
expression
vous
are
voyez ça?
separate,
Si on
independent
comprend
one
ça,
from the
il y a
other.
beaucoup de mythes qui
If we understand that, a lot of myth will disappear. We'll be able to receive better diversity. And the attraction, sexual attraction, is how we feel towards another person. We can also say sexual orientation. And here, we can be attracted towards a person of the same sex, the same gender, towards two genders, or towards several. We say pansexual. That's another term we can use. When I say, for instance, sexual attraction, it is about the body, sexual relationship. When we talk about emotional attraction, we talk more about the emotions, long term relationship. Some people may have a sexual attraction different than its orientation, and other people can have an attraction that is the same for sexual and emotional, but there can be a different combination. So the important you know there's not only extremities of binarity, it's independent one from the other. It's not because we wear pink that we're uh, bisexual. And these are etiquette. Homosexual to be bi gender. These are etiquette that people give themselves, and some people prefer not to have etiquette. That is okay also. And when I make the presentation in schools, I explain that it's normal, maybe not to know where we locate ourselves at the present time. We can question ourselves at any given time, even as an adult. It is normal. It can change the record. We can think we're heterosexual at some time in life because we start to know each other more. Not talking about myself, but at 49, I'm still learning to know myself. Maybe you discover certain things about yourself. It can be at under constant evolution. Now I've really made a summary, but maybe knowing that there are other things that we can give about unicorn. So just to make you live an experience, I will use an activity that we call privilege. Privilege for heterosexual, as when I talk about heterosexual people, a person who is attracted by the opposite sex. And I talk sex gender, the sex is the same as his identity. When I talk about the sign, it's two different things: the sign, the sex, and the sign. But sometimes it can be the same. I'll use this sheet. In your mind, say yes or no to the question that I will ask. I will make a statement and just ask yourself, does it work for me? Is it true for me? Or is it not true for me? You will be asked to share afterwards either. So we'll start. So I did not, I don't talk openly about my difference with my colleague of work, my friends, members of my community. When I see a sign, I look at a movie, or I listen to music, I am sure that my sexual orientation will be represented often and faithfully. I don't have to fear economic consequences, emotional or psychological, in some cases physical, if my friends or family discover my sexual orientation. I can find a therapist or a doctor available and ready to talk about my sexuality. I don't have to explain my sexual orientation or my gender orientation when I became aware. I'm certain that my name and the sex that appear on my identity paper do not correspond with my gender identity. When I fill a form, there's always a case that represents my gender identity. I expect that a doctor will not refuse to offer me medical service because of my gender. People don't lack
J'ai
respect
remarqué que ça a été
because
corrigé.
of calling me wrong words after being corrected.
Aucun étranger
No
n'a demandé
stranger
mon vrai
asked
nom.
me my true name, my real name.
Je n'ai pas à me demander si je vais trouver des
I
toilettes que
don't
je peux
have to ask if
utiliser
I'll
en toute
find
sécurité.
toilet that I can find in all security.
Donc, si vous avez répondu
So if you answered
ça va
yes,
pour moi
it's
à la
okay for
majorité des
me.
questions,
To the
c'est que vous
majority of
êtes
questions,
privilégié.
is that you are
Puis
privileged.
souvent, il y en
And
a qui se reconnaissent
often,
dans ceci, puis les autres
maybe
diront,
there are
OK,
some in
tiens,
here
je
you
réalisais
said,
peut-être pas que
oh,
c'était un
maybe I did
privilège.
not realize it was a privilege for me.
Mais ce n'est pas le cas pour
But it's
plusieurs de
not
nos
the
jeunes
case for
ou
many
plusieurs
of
de
our
nos
young
étudiants.
people or several of our
Que
residents.
c'est pas comme ça.
That's
Il n'y a
not
pas un
the
médecin
way. Maybe they don't
qui
have a
marche à
doctor who
Trois-Rivières
will
qui
say, I
va
don't know
t'envoyer
what to
quelqu'un
do, so I'll
d'autre,
send you to somebody
ou
else.
qu'il n'y a peut-être pas des toilettes
Or maybe
universelles
there's
pour
not
se sentir
universal
en sécurité.
toilet where they can feel
C'est
that
une
they are
réalité
safe.
qui est très
It's a
présente encore même
reality
en
that is ever
2022.
present, even in
C'est super
2022.
important
So it's
qu'on
very
commence à
important
rendre
that we
les
start
choses plus visibles puis qu'on fasse
to
des
make more
changements
visible
quotidiennement
and
dans notre
that we
travail
bring
puis dans notre
changes on a
quotidien.
daily basis in our daily life.
Donc,
So
moi, je viens ici avec mon
I
chapeau
come here with my hat,
d'école, si vous voulez.
my
Donc,
school hat.
vous savez
If you
qu'on a
wish,
fait beaucoup de travail
you know
dans
that
notre
we've done a lot
association.
of work in the school
Une des
system.
choses au niveau de la
One of
province,
the
on a à peu près
things
le top
within the
5 au
province, as
politique
much French
713,
as English, we have
l'orientation
713
sexuelle et
policies
pour
that talk
dire
about
la
sexual
stigmatisation
identity and
puis
to assure that security and the
on a eu
visibility
beaucoup
of it. We
d'initiatives qui ont
took
été
a lot of
prises dans les
initiatives that
écoles
were
en province.
undertaken in our schools. We
Puis les
talk
jeunes
more
sont
about it,
beaucoup plus,
and people
se sentent
are
plus bien.
feel
Donc, on a créé ce
better.
programme Propice-là.
We create that
Puis,
environment,
c'est
appropriate
beau faire ça
environment.
dans nos écoles.
It's
Ça
nice
va
to
bien.
do that in our school.
Mais
It
si
goes
nos
well.
enfants apprennent
But
juste
if
ça
our
à l'école,
children only learn
puis
that
que
in
lorsqu'ils
school,
sortent de l'école puis qu'ils
so
sont dans
when
la
they leave
communauté,
school and
ils
they
n'ont pas
are
le
in
même
the
message.
community, they don't have the
Ça
same
va flancher
message.
nos
It won't
initiatives.
work. Our
Donc, on a
initiative will
besoin
not
que la
work.
communauté
So
dans
we
laquelle ils
need that the
vivent se
community in which they
réunissent
live
puis font les mêmes
can meet
initiatives qui sont
and have the
dans les
same
écoles.
initiative that they find in a
Donc,
school.
on a besoin d'un
So
message qui est
we
commun
need a
pour
message
ces
that is
pour nos
common
jeunes, mais aussi
for
pour
our
nos
young
familles
people, but
qui
also for our
existent, mais
family that
aussi
exists, because we have
nos
to think
familles
of
homoparentales ou
our
transparentales
single
dans
family or
les différentes régions.
transparental
Donc,
parents who
je
are in
voulais
our
simplement
regions. I
vous
simply
réveiller un peu
wanted to
à ce
awaken
qu'on
you
aime
to the
travailler
cause, to the
ceci. Puis
importance
là,
of
dans le
doing
reste de
this,
l'équipe va vous
and
présenter un peu
then
plus
the members of the team will
qu'est-ce qu'on
present to
dit,
you what
qu'est-ce
we
qu'on
mean,
aimerait
what we would
initier
like
avec le
to
comité
initiate
de
with the
crédit Dieppe.
community
Merci.
of Pride. Yeah.
Merci.
Thank you.
Bon, donc nous,
So
nouvellement,
we,
le comité
as
est
you can
composé de
see,
8
the newly formed
résidents
committee
de
of
la belle
8
ville de Dieppe.
residents from the
Nous, notre
beautiful city of
objectif,
Dieppe. Our
c'est d'encourager en
purpose, our
collaboration
goal is
avec
to work
le Centre des arts et bâtiments,
cooperation with
ainsi que
the
la ville de
centers of art and
Dieppe,
culture and the
les
city of
citoyens,
Dieppe,
les
the
entreprises,
citizens,
les
the
écoles et
businesses,
toute la
the schools,
population de la ville de
the
Dieppe,
whole population of
afin
the
de
city of Dieppe,
créer et
in
promouvoir
order to
un
screen
collectif
and promote
pour lutter contre
a collective to
l'homophobie,
fight
la
against
transphobie et la
homophobia,
discrimination
transphobia, and
des résidents.
discrimination and
Tous les
prejudices.
jours, même à mon âge encore,
Every
à
day, even at my age, at
31 ans,
31 years of age,
j'ai encore
I
des
still,
gens qui me disent des
there are
commentaires
still
qui
people who make
juste
comments.
l'autre semaine.
Uh,
Je
uh,
croirais qu'on
a few weeks
réalise que
ago,
ça
you would think as
diminuerait
an
encore.
adult it
C'est
would
encore aujourd'hui
slow down.
que
No, even today in
nous,
2022, we
pourquoi
still
on
see it.
a organisé ce comité-là,
Why we
c'est que
organize
la
this
ville de Dieppe
committee?
est une
The
ville
city of Dieppe
inclusive
is an
qui
inclusive
aime
city
les
that
toutes les
aims the
personnes
well-being
dans
of
Dieppe.
all the persons who live
C'est
in it.
pourquoi qu'on doit s'assurer
That's
que
why
nous
we have to
respectons les
make
droits
sure
de
that we
tous
respect the
et
right
assurant
of
que chaque
everyone
personne se
and we
sente chez soi
wish for
ici
everyone
à
to
Dieppe.
feel at home here in Dieppe.
Comme on a dit, on est
As
extrêmement
we said,
satisfait de
we
résider à
are
la ville de
happy
Dieppe.
to be residents of the
C'est
city
quelque
of
chose qu'on
Dieppe.
tient beaucoup à
It's
cœur.
something that we
Puis je vais
cherish very
présenter
much,
les
and I will
merveilleux
uh,
8
introduce the
membres du
marvelous
comité.
8 members of the committee.
Donc, moi,
So
Georges
myself,
Vautour,
Josh
président
Votour,
du Centre Hill, et lui, je suis à la présidence du
is
comité.
we am president of this committee.
Prochain, nous allons.
Next, we have,
On peut aller en travers des slides. Oui.
we can
Ce
go
serait
to the
moi en
slides.
drag
This is me
et moi en
as
tant
drag
que
and
aujourd'hui.
me
Est-ce que vous pouvez passer la
as
photo?
today.
C'est
slightly more handsome on the picture,
Nous
but
avons
next
Serge
one,
Leblanc,
Serge Leblanc,
qui est notre
who is
présidence.
our
C'est en
president.
prononçant il et lui.
It, il et
Notre
lui
assistant,
is pronounced.
nous avons Lisa Leblanc,
Lisa
qui est
Leblanc
une maman et une alliée de la
et Mama,
communauté.
an ally of the
Notre
community.
secrétaire,
Our
nous prononçons
secretary,
elle et
who
là.
pronounced our
Par
il
après,
et
on a
la.
notre belle
And then we
Françoise,
have our beautiful Frasbro,
qui est notre personne
who
forte
is
de liaison
our
avec nous,
liaison
qui est prononçant
officer.
elle et là.
She is El
Par après,
Ila,
un de mes collègues de la communauté,
and then a colleague for the
Sébastien
community that I love very much,
notre
Khalil Babino,
relationniste,
our
et
relation
aucune
officer.
préférence
There's no
ses pronoms.
preference in the pronoun.
Par après, on a la merveilleuse maman
And with marvelous
Colin
Mama of Khalil
Lise
Babino,
Leclerc Babineau,
Lise
c'est
Leclerc Babino,
prononçant elle et
her
là.
pronouns are Il
Elle est
and
responsable
La,
de
and she's
l'organisation
responsible for the
des bénévoles
organization
et
for our
l'événementiel.
volunteers and everything else.
Par après, nous avons
And
une
then we
merveilleuse
have
drag queen de
another
la
drag queen
communauté,
from our
Benoît
beautiful
Dugas,
community,
qui est
Benoît
un
Dugas,
jeune qui va à l'école Mathieu Martin.
a
Lui, c'est
young
notre
person who goes to
représentation
Mathieu
de la
Martin. He
jeunesse. Lui,
represents
c'est
our
en
youth.
prononçant il,
His pronouns are
elle
Il,
et elle.
Yel, and El.
Et par après, on a
And
Travis Barr,
afterwards, we have
qui est
Travis Barr,
direction artistique
who is
de la
artistic
bâtiment. Et lui, c'est
direction, and
prononçant
it's
il
pronounced
et
R,
lui.
Il, and we.
Et nous avons notre
And we
fameux
have
trésorier
our famous
qu'on est
treasurer
extrêmement content d'avoir avec nous,
that we're happy to have with
Roger
us,
Leblanc, et
Rod
c'est
Leblanc.
prononçant il
It's
et lui.
pronounced R, Il, and lui.
Donc, pour vous parler un petit
So,
peu à
to
propos
talk a little
de
bit
notre
more
logo, pour vous
about our
présenter le
logo, to
logo et
present
tout,
our
je vais
logo and
inviter
everything, I would
qui
invite
va
Claire
venir nous
Babino,
introduire un peu.
who will come and say a few words or talk to you a little bit.
Merci beaucoup, Josh.
Thank you,
Alors,
Josh.
moi, c'est Colin Babineau.
I'm Claire Babino.
C'est moi qui travaille en communication
I
auprès de la
work
communauté.
in communication with the
Alors, je vais vous
committee.
présenter notre logo
I will
qui a été
present our
conçu par
logo that was
l'artiste local
conceived by a
André
local
Gauguin.
artist called Andre Gauguin.
Comme vous pouvez voir, le logo est
As you can
bilingue.
see, the logo is
On s'est aussi
bilingual.
inspiré du logo de la
We
ville de Dieppe.
inspired from
Comme vous
the
pouvez
logo
voir,
of the
les
city of
étoiles.
Dieppe, as you can see with the star and everything else.
On a utilisé les couleurs
We
de
use
la
the
fierté
color
communauté
of the
blanche.
Pride drag
On a
as the
aussi
classic
su
colors,
intégrer
but we were able to
d'autres
integrate
petites étoiles qui représentent
other small stars
la
that
communauté transgenre,
represents the
asexuelle et
transgender,
non-binaire.
lesbian, and
Je vais aussi vous partager nos
would
valeurs.
also share our
Alors,
values.
les premières valeurs qu'on
So the
utilise,
first
c'est
values we
l'acceptation et
have is
l'inclusion.
the
On
acceptation,
veut
the
vraiment
acceptance,
promouvoir un
and
environnement
we want
inclusif pour
to
tous par
promote
rapport à l'identité
inclusion
sexuelle,
for all as to
culturelle et romantique.
gender, romantic,
On
and
veut vraiment que les habitants de la
we
ville de
want
Dieppe
people, the
se sentent
resident of the city
sécurisés
of
et
Dieppe,
accueillis
be
tous sans
secured,
avoir de
safe,
préjugés.
and all have a feeling of belonging.
Deuxièmement, on parle aussi de francophonie.
Secondly, we talk about
On veut
francophonie.
vraiment s'assurer de
We want
promouvoir
to
le
make
talent
sure to
queer, plus
promote the
spécifiquement
queer
le
talent, more
queer
specifically
francophone
the
acadien de la
queer
province.
French
On veut
Canadian
que cet
talent
artiste-là ait la
in the
place
province.
réelle
We want
pour
these artists to
partager leur
have a
talent
place to
auprès de
share
la
their
communauté.
talent with the community as a whole.
Finalement,
Finally,
on parle aussi d'équité.
we talk about
Chaque personne
equity.
à Dieppe occupe
Each
une
person in
place parce
Dieppe
que notre ville est
holds
vraiment
a
une
place
cité
because our
équitable.
city is really an equitable
Euh, on veut vraiment
location.
que
We
la
really want the
communauté
people of the community
LGBTQI+ se sente à la
LBGTQ
même hauteur que tous.
L plus feels at the
Je vais
same
maintenant inviter
level as the
Raj
others. I will
de
invite
partager nos
Raj
stratégies.
to share our
Merci.
strategies. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you.
Bonsoir, Monsieur le maire.
Good evening, Your
Merci,
Worship.
conseillère,
Thank you,
de nous accueillir
counselors,
ici.
to receive us so warmly.
Moi, je présente un petit peu
I
la stratégie
present the
de la communauté par
strategy of the
rapport
community
au succès de
as
nos
to the
entreprises.
success of our
Premièrement,
businesses.
premièrement, la
First of all,
sensibilisation
we
par
have
rapport à ce qui est des
awareness,
défis
cooperation,
de l'avenir.
visibility, and
Pour
marketing.
ce qui est de la question de
As for
sensibilisation
the
et
question
d'éducation, je
of
trouve que
awareness and
cette
education,
dynamique de
we
vouloir
find
créer un
in a
mouvement
dynamic to
à
want to
Dieppe
create a
par rapport à
movement in the app.
la sensibilisation
You
et
need
l'éducation.
awareness,
Puis ce
education.
qu'on veut faire avec ça, c'est
What we
surtout
want to do with
créer
that is create
une conscientisation de
a
l'importance
sensitization of
de
the
l'inclusion
importance of
pour une
inclusion
variété de raisons.
for a variety of reasons.
On a parlé de la
we've
justice
talked
avec
about justice
les
and
plus, on a
equity, but
également
we
des
can
régions
also talk about
où
economy.
je vois des oreilles qui vont
And I
s'ouvrir.
see some years that will
Parce que c'est vrai
awaken
que
because you
l'exclusion et la
know that
discrimination
exclusion,
échappent.
discrimination
Puis
cost a lot.
équité et
And
inclusive
an inclusive community that invests in
vont avoir
diversity
des retombées
will have fallout
une variation de 1 à 4. Pour
in
chaque dollar
variation of what
investi,
for
il y
each
aura 4
dollar
dollars de
invested,
retour.
you'll have
Attention,
$4
les
of
projets ne sont pas nécessairement en
fallout.
infrastructure
These are not
comme
in
réhabiliter
infrastructure as we would like
dans des routes
in
dégradées,
the well
mais
paved
c'est
highway, but it comes
un abaissement des frais
with
de santé mentale, des
the
frais
lowering
falloir
of fees
médicaments,
concerning
et ainsi de suite.
discrimination and
Santé
whatnot.
Canada, puis
Health
la province
Canada
évalue un
and the Red
suicide
Cross
à l'hôpital de
uh,
650 000
talk about $650,000 in
Puis
loss of
chaque fois
creativity
qu'un
of a
résident
suicide
de
each
Dieppe
time a
décide
resident
d'aller
of
à
Dieppe
Montréal ou
decides
à Toronto
to
parce
go
qu'il
to
est
Montreal or
lesbien
Toronto
ou
because he's gay or lesbian. The
chaque
city
fois qu'une personne ne
loses
veut
a
pas
lot.
venir à Dieppe
Each
parce que
time
c'est trop
somebody doesn't want to
inclusif,
come here because it's not inclusive,
chaque fois qu'on a
they
un
lose something.
président de
Every
Dieppe
time
qui
a
choisit
president of
d'aller
Dieppe
ailleurs au
decides to go
gouvernement,
elsewhere,
ça
the
fait
city
probablement
lose
une
something.
province qui représente
So
dix
what
à 15
represent
de
10
votre
to
communauté.
15% of your community,
Vous pouvez faire le calcul
you
par
can
rapport à notre
do the
constitution
calculation as to our basic
on
calculation. We
entreprise
don't
comme
want to lose
TD
that.
qui
We have
viennent à
business
Dieppe
like
parce qu'on est
TD that
inclusif.
comes here because we're inclusive.
TD,
The
c'est
with
probablement un
TD is
des plus
probably
corporations des
one of
institutions
the
qui a le plus
corporation
d'inclusivité
institution that has
au
the
New-Brunswick.
biggest
Allez porter nos noix
inclusivity.
facilement
But
aux
in
gens
the
ici
walk
comme
and
Frank McKenna peut le
talk to
faire
you.
facilement.
Frank McKenna can easily talk why they choose
Donc,
the.
on veut continuer
So
dans
we
cette
want to continue
dimension économique de
that
visiter les
sense
gens
to
pour des raisons
receive
économiques, mais
people for
également
economic
pour éviter des bonnes personnes.
because we're a
Et
good
c'est notre
person
responsabilité.
and it's a good place to live.
Lorsqu'on parle de collaboration,
When
on
we
parle
talk
de
about
législation.
cooperation, we talk about
Alors, dans notre
going to get some
communauté, il y
allies.
a plusieurs parents
In
qui
our
sont impliqués.
community, a lot of
Lorsqu'on
parents
parle
are.
de 10 à 15 de la
When we
population
talk
de
about
Dieppe,
10,
qui est presque la
50%,
totalité de Caraquette mis
it's
ensemble,
more than all of
il y
Caracat
a
put
probablement
together.
5 à 6 000
There's about
personnes issues
five
de
to
la
six
communauté
thousand
et qu'on
people
veut plus
of
élargir. Avec
LGBTQS of
l'addition de
the
la famille,
add
des
to
amis,
that
ça fait
the
beaucoup de
family and
monde.
friends. It
C'est
represents
sûr
a lot of
que
people
malheureusement,
that unfortunately
on est influencé
would be
négativement si
influenced
jamais il y a
negatively if
des
ever
actes homophobes ou
there was some
transphobiques ou quoi que ce soit.
homophobic
Donc, on veut
or
célébrer
transphobic action. So we want
notre
to
niveau
celebrate
d'inclusivité
our level of tolerance
en
India
collaborant. Alors, lorsqu'on veut collaborer,
by
même
when we want to
si certains
cooperate.
sont déjà
When
allés
I'm here, some
à
people have
Caraquette ou à
gone to
Toronto ou à
Caracat or
Montréal,
Toronto or
certains vont aussi aller
Montreal
à
or
San
Sydney in
Francisco,
Australia or San
toutes les
Francisco
villes
or
qui sont
LA,
bien connues comme
all the
étant des
cities
villes
that are well
inclusives.
recognized as
Vous
being
allez voir
gay-friendly
toutes
city,
les
you will
entreprises
know
qui sont
that all
impliquées
their business
dans le
participate in
projet
it. So I
Louis
expect to
prochainement
talk with
pour
Louis
voir qu'est-ce que expansion Dieppe peut
shortly to see
faire
what
ou
expansion
avoir
the
une
app
ville
can
comme
do to
Caraquette.
build our
Si jamais
city
si
like
Caraquette peut le
Caracat.
faire,
If
Dieppe peut le faire
Caracat can
mieux.
do it, the app can do it better.
Tous les commerces à Dieppe avaient
All
un
the business
drapeau
in the app had
la
a
photo
flag
dans leur
of
écran.
pride
Ça n'a pas
in
été
their
facile.
window.
On
It
parle de
was not
pêcheurs, de
easy. We
bûcherons
talk
et ainsi
about
de suite
fishermen,
qui ont changé
lumberjack,
la
and
donne.
so on. That changes
Puis où est-ce
the
qu'il y
tone.
avait
And
une minorité vocale qui parlait
the vocal
fort
minority was
contre,
talking
ça n'a
strong
pas
or
marché.
against that.
Après
They
5
don't
ans,
talk
6 ans
anymore. After
d'existence, ils ont
five,
fait
6 years of existence,
preuve économiquement
they've made their
socialement.
economically and socially.
Je pense que je prêche un petit peu à la
I
chorale, mais
preach to the choir, so I'll go
alors,
forward.
lorsqu'on parle de visibilité, on parle de laisser les gens s'exprimer, mais on parle aussi de célébration. Alors, le
We talk
spectacle
about celebration with
commence le 10
visibility.
juin.
So the show you'll
Souvent, le
see on June
spectacle
18th
est
will
assez
be
euh, pertinent par rapport à ce qui se
pertinent
passe dans le monde drag en ce moment. Vous savez que
with what you see in the
RuPaul
drag
s'est
world
déjà
now.
fait.
You
Je
know
ne sais pas
that
si vous avez, s'il y en a vous avez
RuPaul.
entendu parler du
I
spectacle au
don't
Capitole la
know
semaine
if you
dernière,
heard of
mais
the
c'est
show at the
vraiment
Capitol last
très
week. There
varié. Il y a
were
autant de
a
straight là que de bi,
diversified crowd. There
et
was a
ainsi de
lot
suite
of
qui étaient là
straight
pour
men and women as
célébrer
well as gay men. They were there for the show and to
la diversité.
celebrate
Qu'est-ce que c'est la
diversity.
diversité?
And what is a queer
C'est ça,
today?
c'est une
I
personnalité,
teach
c'est
at
une
university, and
personnalité.
I have a
Babyface queer, c'est la prochaine génération.
sports people with Aglaber
Ça va
that
être ça va
paint
voir.
their nails
La
black.
prochaine
People
génération,
who
ça va
are
être
my
plus
age
affranchi.
will know that the next generation
Affronté, affronté
will
à ce qui s'en vient.
will
C'est
face up to what's coming.
du cool en
I
queer.
know you're
Bon,
all around my age,
question
but you run
marketing,
faster than me.
on va beaucoup
As far
exposer
as marketing goes,
sur Instagram,
we're
Facebook,
going to
etc.
put the city of Dieppe on
En
Instagram,
compétition
Facebook,
avec
etc. We
beaucoup
don't
des artistes
want
et beaucoup
to
des
compete with the
célébrités
Caddy
qui font du
Love.
travail.
We love them and they
Ça,
do
c'était
excellent work.
l'ancien maire et
And
maintenant
you
le
know, the former mayor is
président du
president of the
nous autres,
Caddy Love. So
Caracat,
there's been a movement in Caracat.
Dieppe étant la plus grande
And
municipalité
Dieppe is the
acadienne dans le
biggest
monde,
city,
n'a pas
the
notre propre
biggest Acadian
célébrité,
city in the world, and we don't have our
on peut
own
faire mieux que ça.
day. We can do better.
Il faut faire compétition.
But
Mais
it's
si
not
ça
to
se
compete.
passait dans l'esprit
Even if it was in the spirit of
le
the
fait de le faire
three
en français,
communities, Moncton,
des fois
Riverview, and
voir
Dieppe, to do
ce
it
que
in
ça
French
donnerait, mais aussi
interests
c'est
us.
mieux, on trouve
But
que
to
ça
do
serait
it here at home is
pas
very
pire.
important.
J'ai hâte de répondre à vos
And I'm
questions
looking forward to
sur
answering your
comment
questions. I'm sure
vous
you
avez
have
des quiz à la
some.
fin que je vais ramasser puis qu'on va
And
répondre.
I'm going to give you a little quiz at the end as well. And I'll
Bon,
take it
un petit
from
peu
you
pour
as
présenter
to present
notre journée qu'on a
now
décidé
our
de
day
planifier puis qu'on est
that we are
aujourd'hui.
planning.
C'est un événement qui va être le
And it's
début
an event that
de
will
notre
be
comité.
a beginning for our committee.
Puis on est extrêmement excités.
So we're
Donc,
very excited about it.
l'événement qu'on a décidé
The
de
event
faire
that
cette
we're
année,
planning
c'est
this year
la
is the
Eleganza.
Grag
Donc,
Gala
au
Eleganza
New-Brunswick,
in New
on a à
Brunswick.
peu près une
We
trentaine
have about
d'artistes de
30
drag.
drag
Beaucoup
artists,
d'entre eux sont
and
d'Acadie.
many of them are
Donc, on a
Acadians.
décidé
So we
que c'était une
decided
opportunité
that it
de
would
faire
be a
un
good
lancement, de faire un coupe
opportunity
de ruban, de
to
commencer
have
notre comité
ribbons to
avec un
start our
porte-drapeau
committee
donc
by
drag
sharing
acadien de
with
notre
an
communauté
Acadian drag
dans
within our
Sudbury.
community, including
J'ai
Nishi
pris
Kamar. I
l'instruction dans
don't
le
know
fond
if you know Sami
des
Landry,
artistes
who's famous on TikTok,
eux vont être
and
inclus.
they will be included.
Comme on dirait,
We're going to fly them in
événement parce que
to
c'est
be
eux
a
qui ont
part of our
commencé
event because they're the
des artistes
ones
drag
that
dans la
planted the
communauté
seed
acadienne
for drag artists
et on est
here in the
extrêmement
Acadian
content de les
community.
avoir avec
So
nous.
we're very happy to have them with
Donc,
us.
pour notre programmation provisoire,
For our program,
les activités précurseurs,
the
on
first
espérant
events,
extrêmement de faire de lever. Un moment, s'il vous plaît.
one moment,
Lever du
please.
drapeau avec vous.
We
le
want
1er
to
juin.
raise the flag with you on June 1st.
C'est pour ça que je touche jamais la technologie.
That's why I don't touch technology.
Donc, le 1er juin, comme
So
je
on
dis,
June
c'est le
1st,
mois de la
it
fierté.
is
Donc,
the
pour
June
ceux
is the month
qui
of
on aimerait
Pride,
faire
gay
du
pride. So
drag,
we want to
avec la
raise the
communauté,
flag with
avec
people
vous,
in the community,
et
with
des
you,
invités
the
spéciaux.
committee, and special
C'est
guests.
quelque chose qu'on aimerait
It's
absolument le faire
something
avec vous.
that we really want to
Ça
do
serait
with
la
you.
soirée
And like I said,
inauguration
on June
de la
18th,
Eleganza.
this would be the Gala
Notre
Drag
invité spécial,
Eleganza,
que
and our
Raj a
special
dit,
guest, as Raj
vous
said,
connaissez Canada's
everybody
Drag Race,
knows
Toronto.
Canada's Drag
Donc, invité
Race.
spéciaux de Toronto.
So we have a
Juice
special
box
guest, a
aussi.
juice box that we have invited.
Super bonne, super.
She's
On est
excellent,
extrêmement content de l'avoir avec nous.
and we're very
Et
happy that she'll
elle
be with
a
us. And
aussi
as
invité
well, we
11
invited
artistes drag
11 drag artists from New Brunswick.
essentiels. Malheureusement, on n'est pas tant que ça à Dieppe, là.
We're not that many in Dieppe, but we'll have more each day. People tell us that they want to start doing drag, and it's a lot of fun to do as well. During the evening, we would have people, artists in the region that are going to share their art in different ways or jewelry. And as well, we have
billet VIP qui permettrait de
a
rencontrer
happy
différents
hour, five to
artistes,
seven,
un léger goûter,
to
des
read the artists, and we
des
would have
biscuits
cake and
et d'ici
cookies.
l'ouverture officielle, le début
And we would have the official
officiel de l'événement.
opening of the
Ça, c'est
committee for the event.
notre
So this
journée
is
qu'on
a
a de
bit
planifié pour
of
l'instant.
what we've planned so
Et là, on va
far.
continuer avec nos attentes. Qu'est-ce qu'on aimerait?
And
Donc,
here's our wish
pour
list
le soutien financier,
for financial support.
on a un budget provisoire
We have
qui coûte, ça inclut
a provisional budget of $20,000. That's for all the artists,
ainsi que les locations
lodging,
d'installation du centre des arts de Dieppe.
rentals of installation for
Aussi qu'on aimerait
Art Center in
avoir
Dieppe,
la
and also we would like
que notre festival fasse
the
partie du volet culturel de la
collaboration, and
convention annuelle de
we
la ville
want
de
to be
Dieppe.
part of the cultural
Attirer les médias, les
aspect
radios
of the
et
city of Dieppe. We
faire
want the
connaître
media
la région
there,
de Dieppe.
radio,
Ça, c'est
TV, to
sûrement
show
pas
that Dieppe is
facile,
very inclusive
puis
and
que
that
toutes
we're
les
happy
réseaux
to
sociaux
be
vont
here,
le partager.
and all
Ce n'est que
the social
ici,
media will
notre
share
amour
it.
pour les gens de la
So
communauté
here we say our love for the
LGBTQIA+,
people in the community, to us
dans une ville d'entraide,
LGBTQIA plus,
que c'est
and
tellement
our
le fun
joy to live in a
comme
city that is
et comme c'est le
growing
fun
and
d'être
has
unis, la
an
force, c'est
enormous
qu'ensemble,
potential.
on peut tout
Union,
faire. On va
together,
passer aux
we are stronger. So now
questions.
we'll go to questions. Any questions from councillors? Madame Boudreau. Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a question, but I wanted to congratulate you to having created this committee. I was very happy. Last year we were talking about at the Moncton River Pride, and I'm looking forward to see what is going to come out of this committee and to see what we can do to help you for inclusion with the decisions that we'll be making for the interest of the community. And I'll surely be there for the Gala Elegance as well. Thank you.
Merci, Madame
Thank you,
Turgeon-Roy.
Madame Turgeon-Roy. Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to repeat what Melissa said, but your initiative is very welcome in our community. It's time that Dieppe has its own committee and everything that comes with it. Education for us, I learned something, and I can see this day as being a very happy, festive day, and can be a day of education for our community as well. That's very interesting, and we can learn a lot from people, and people need to learn. So, congratulations, and I support what you're doing, and I'll surely be there as well. Thank
Merci.
you.
Je vois personne d'autre.
No other
Alors,
questions?
ça veut dire que c'est à mon tour.
So it's my turn now.
Pourquoi
That's
ça vous a
good.
pris si longtemps que ça?
What took you so long?
Sérieusement,
Seriously,
arrêté d'aller à la
I
Pride.
stopped going to the Great Pride in Moncton because it was in
Ça va
Moncton.
reprendre
So we'll have to do something very soon.
C'est ça, et voilà. Il faut commencer à
It'll
faire
be
quelque
there
chose
for
quelque
years to
part.
come. Yes, we have to start somewhere.
OK, on
That's
n'a pas d'autres
good.
questions. Alors, on a
No
fait
other
une présentation.
questions. So thank you
Vous
for
avez
your
une relation
presentation.
avec notre
I
cité.
know you have a
Bien hâte
relationship
de voir comment ça
with
part. Puis à mesure que ça va passer, puis
with our city, and we're looking forward to see the developments. And
ça vient avec
Roger, always have the last word, don't you?
Donc, je voulais
It
juste
comes
dire
with
que ce document que
experience.
j'ai remis, c'est par
I just
rapport
wanted
aux listes
to
de
give you
recommandations
details on
des
this
propositions
document.
des
It's
intervenants pour dire les
recommendations
services
for the
des
service
intervenants.
providers,
Alors,
and the council
lisez
is
les
a service
recommandations,
provider. So
s'assurer
I
que nos
invite you
employés
to read the
sont
recommendations and ensure that the
informés. C'est aussi
employees
pour tous les secteurs,
uh,
les
know
directeurs,
about
les
this for all the
directrices.
sectors, directors, and committees as well.
Là, on ira
And then
on ira inviter
we
les
will
membres de la
invite
communauté
members of the
dans
community,
un prochain
business
événement qu'on va
people,
passer avec les employés
as well soon. But we're going to start with the employees of the city and members of council. I always want to have the last word. When you control the mic, it's easy. Yes, we come from far, but at the same time, it would be good for Dieppe to be the San Francisco of Canada. That being said, have a good evening, but you can stay. We have excellent presentations coming up, but we'll understand if you leave. The next point, the next group, and we're on time, and I love that. We're even 5 minutes ahead. I love it. We have Conseil provincial de personnes d'ascendance africaine du Nouveau-Brunswick. African ascendants of New Brunswick with Mamadou, who is representing the group. Welcome.
Ok, bah c'est bon. Bon, ben, merci, monsieur le.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ladies, gentlemen, councillors, I'm very happy to be here. I'm Mamadou Ouli Diallo, and I'm president of the Provincial Council of African Ascendants. And I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about a project, a very important one, that will contribute to the development, economic development of the province of New Brunswick, and especially of the city of Dieppe. For this presentation, here's a summary of my presentation. Firstly, the project is an incubator that contribute to the economic development of people from the African ascendants. It's a business center that we want in the city of Dieppe. It's a New Brunswick Black Business Center. So it's an economic incubator for Africans mostly. The project is unique. It consists of creating a business center for Blacks. It will favor creation of money, of riches, and eliminate barriers, economic and cultural and social, of the Black people. And we want active participation for economic in yeah, to create employment in the region of Greater Moncton and to find solutions against systemic racism and autonomization of the Black community. For the context, this is in the decade of African descendants from 2015 to 2024. So we salute the Prime Minister of Canada, who recognized this decade and put it into and elaborated a federal program for Black communities in Canada. So our project is in this same context. We want a partnership with different governments as the city of Dieppe, and at the moment, uh, we're favoring economic development in the province, expansion Dieppe, and we think that the city of Dieppe would be a good candidate to welcome this project. We also have a lot of francophones in this region. Our objectives is to have a space for this center, a building that's already built to save costs of construction. within our community, we have a lot of obstacles for African people, be it discrimination and different forms of systemic racism that is present in the society. There is favoritism, it's hard to access financing for our members, and we don't have a business network. And there's a difficulty to access business networks. And the francophones and anglophone aspect, there are members that have trouble with this, and there is an absence of mentors to help. So we want this kind of center with these objectives. Our objectives are general and specific. Our objective is to create a new Brunswick economy, which is inclusive and create new businesses with vast potential and resources, innovation, expansion of enterprise of businesses. We want to develop and reinforce bilateral relations and multilateral of New Brunswick, as well as member countries of the Francophonie, by establishing solid partnerships for Africans and Caribbeans. Our objectives specifically are to encourage Blacks to start businesses, to support them to obtain funds, training in administration and business, to ensure mentoring as well, to give psychological support as well, and give liaison services with the schools, the University of Moncton, the colleges, CNBC, and BCC, and to have liaison with these schools, with businesses and government agencies. So we have many services we want to offer, and they're subdivided into the community and entrepreneurial. Globally, we want to collaborate with different orders of government by developing work that will deal with problems and concerns of people from an African descendants. With entrepreneurial, we have a vision to encourage people from an African descent and to help to obtain funds necessary, give training in management, ensure mentoring, give advice in development of products and services, help interns and liaison with the schools, the colleges, and universities in our community. We have many phases. We're at the phase one now. We've had meetings that were informal and sometimes formal with the partners to help us with this project. And we met University of Moncton, the Economic Council of New Brunswick, and the city of Dieppe to create partnerships. And we've had many discussions, and these discussions went very well and are promising. So at this stage, we want to have support of the city of Dieppe to have a space that could house this project. So it would have a real economic impact. A statistic Canada indicates that there are 7,000 Blacks here in New Brunswick, and 10% of our members of the population, including 700 people. So we want to offer many services and projects for this initiative, the first year, a second year, the next few years. we have objectives to recognize financing and justice, mentoring, to create 20 direct jobs and indirect jobs as well, with the creation of 163 projects of 5 years and initiatives for socializing and mentoring and creating jobs all over New Brunswick. It will be enormous for the city of Dieppe because the project will take place here. With the economic impacts, we need funds. We need an initial budget of $215,000. If we already have a center where we can put this project, then it can be less than this amount. And we also want to ask the province as well for 904 $800,000 for the first year. So we would have a total budget of $1,119,800,000. And this would be divided 60% provincial and 40%, 20% municipal. And this would represent the building that would be given for the project and 30% from the federal government. So there would be a governance team put into place to manage this center. It would be a board of directors with African descendants generally. To conclude, this project was done according to the Black Decade in New Brunswick, and we want to have initiatives from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as well. Marc Saint-Exupéry says that our way of thinking, socially for social groups, depends on a belonging. And even with all our efforts in the public, we're all having problems that other groups will not have. And if we are better served ourselves, I think the city of Dieppe will be better served as well. So thank you very much for your attention this evening. And my team is here with me. If you have any questions, we'll be pleased to answer them. Thank you. Thank you. Bravo. First question from Madame Godbout. Thank you for your presentation. Your project has a lot of development of ecosystems with their entrepreneurs. Did you have discussions already with other levels of government, provincial and federal, about financing? Do you have any projects in place already or that you're considering? I just want to understand like what phase you're in. Yes, we've met recently, Colin Dunn, that with whom we talked about our project. She was enthusiastic, and we went to expansion DFC. But federally, I know there are funds for ecosystems. Did you do anything on that stage? We initiated contacts with the federal government through Jeanette Petitpas Taylor, but we wanted to finalize here the city of Dieppe, and then gradually we will go further. With the city, you're working with Expansion Dieppe right now? I worked with Expansion Dieppe for 10 years. So the request was transmitted to by Expacio Dieppe when Benedict Henry was with us, with Immigration Dieppe, and we sent a letter of support for this initiative and for our commitment, our financial commitment for the type of project as we're presenting tonight. I presume that there's a link as well with that I call ma tante Philomène with your mama Philomène at the federal government. I think she sits on a federal committee that tries to develop entrepreneurial side of for our students and the community, immigration community in general. This she supports this project, but I don't know what the committee is exactly. I knew she was in a federal committee. I didn't dream about that, did I? Okay. So on a federal committee and was forward looking for somebody or somewhere where they could get money for our African population. I think we'll have to speak to her again. Maybe that's where we had discussions with Francois Dieppe at the time. Because my suggestion is that we could have a meeting with the people here tonight, the expansion Dieppe, and then to see if we're talking about the same projects, to see if there's any links that can be made. I don't want to see federal money sitting on the table. Of course, we're talking about the same project because Philomène supports this project, but it's to determine which community will do things. But yes, of course, definitely it's the same project. Any other question? Madame Goodbout. Okay. No other questions? I think there'll be telephone calls made to communicate with people to see how far we can go with this. I hope that it'll be a straight road to jobs for many people in the region. So thank you for your efforts here tonight. And I hope this is just the beginning of a story that we will discover and develop. Thank you very much. Thank you. You have something to add, Luc? Oh, no, it's. Oh, yes, we'll take the information. You already have their information? Good.
We're ahead of ourselves. Okay. For the Kodiak police officer, we have a visitor with us, Monsieur Don Moore.
Or you're well?
I think so.
You and all your friends?
I've never had this many friends.
Maybe introduce yourself for those that don't
Just a moment. So, okay.
don't know you.
I may begin. Bonjour, Monsieur le Maire et les membres.
Monsieur le Maire, members of council, I am Don Moore. I am professor of management at Grenoble University and the president of the Regional Police Authority of the Kodiak APAC. Tonight, I have come to talk about our responsibility as an authority.
But feel free to ask
There's
questions.
still hope.
There's still hope. Yes, exactly. I'm going to now walk you through a presentation that I've done to a few different community organizations so far. I've done it a couple weeks ago to the City of Moncton, to you guys this evening. I'm doing it to the Town of Riverview next week, about the Kodiak Regional Policing Authority, also known as the CRPA, APRC, from there. So. My presentation is French slide, English slide, French slide, English slide. I'm just going to leave it on the French slide, but I'm going to speak in English, and I'll do my best to answer any questions towards the end from there. So I'm not going to read everything word for word, but I do want to go through a little bit just to level set, get you to understand what is the job of the Kodiak Regional Policing Authority? What do we do for you, essentially, you and the other two municipalities here in the Kodiak region, and then what we're up to here this year as we proceed in the work that we do, again, for you. The CRPA is responsible to the municipalities of Dieppe, Moncton, and Riverview for the purpose of providing regional policing services and to ensure an adequacy of strategic planning, police coverage, and fiscal management from a financial perspective to our regional policing service. If you notice, I'm not saying the words RCMP. I'm saying Regional Policing Service, okay? Our police service provider, if you will. The CRPA is not the RCMP. That's not our job, okay? We are a civilian oversight board to set priorities and activities to watch the finances and so on of what our police service does. The CRPA demonstrates accountability to the public, to our partner municipalities, to the province, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, and to other stakeholders through periodic reports, meetings, receiving representations from key stakeholders, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, and other interested persons by operating in a transparent manner of the work that we attempt to do. A few of the mandates that I want to highlight here of the Kodiak Regional Policing Service. We set out to receive input from the community, based on safety and security needs within our Kodiak region. We set the goals, the priorities, and objectives of our regional policing service. However, just given the nature of it's the RCMP, we obviously can't set out a priority of something that would conflict with what their work is from there. We do provide reports as reasonably required by the three municipalities and other organizations, other stakeholders, to make sure that we are still doing what you want us to be able to do. And we conduct the governance of the regional police service according to the Police Act of the province of New-Brunswick. The Police Act is a multiple page document. If you ever have trouble sleeping at night, just open up that document. You will fall asleep after a couple pages. But if you could get to section 17.01 through to 17.07, that is what governs what's called a police authority, which by definition is a little different than what a police board is, which is covered in the Act, and what a police commission is. Those are three different types of things. There are slight different definitions. Please don't quiz me on exactly what those definitions are, but we are a police authority according to the New Brunswick Police Act. That is the primary document of how the Kodiak Regional Policing Service, the Kodiak Regional Policing Authority operates. How the Kodiak Regional Policing Authority was created initially in 1998 by an order of council and approved by the Lieutenant Governor. However, the three municipalities did come together in 2001, a few years later, and actually agreed to it. So it had operated for a few years, but there was finally an agreement. From time to time, that agreement does get updated, and it actually sets the terms and conditions of how the CRPA operates and the funding formula between the three municipalities to pay for that policing. Please don't quiz me a whole lot on what that may or may not say, but I will try to answer some questions in a little bit concerning such. 1 second. There we go. Our style, our commitment of how we operate as an authority is based on a community policing model. If I ask 10 different people, what does community policing mean to you? I'm going to get 11 different types of responses. And that's our job to try to figure out what that really means. I have some verbiage here, but it's basically to have to be mindful of civic trusteeship in the oversight of how a community police force operates. The Kodiak Regional Policing Authority operates as an independent body from our regional police service, but we still have to work with them on the priorities and objectives and key performance indicators of how we measure their success of such and so on. But we do try to be as much as we can transparent and accountable to you and other stakeholders in our community. Our philosophy as a board, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but community policing is an interactive partnership between the public and the police to mutually identify, prioritize, prevent and solve crime and disorder problems, thereby improving the quality of life in our region. The last part of this, the police force and the board, or the authority in this situation, have the responsibility to ensure that policies are in place to reflect the needs of our community to make sure that we do feel safe in our region from there. Our mission, our vision, as any organization should have, is to provide an independent oversight and governance of our police force in order to ensure a safe community, as I said before, but also to provide effective governance that facilitates innovative and responsive policing to create a safe community through the forging of strategic partnerships between the community and its police force. Well, how are we put together? Well, in that agreement in 2001, I don't know if you were, I know you've signed different versions of the years, because I've read through the 33 pages. Again, not an exciting read, but if you do want to fall asleep, just take a look at that. But your signature is on it there a few times, Your Worship. But it actually governs in what we'll call the Memorandum of Understanding between the three municipalities of how the Kodiak Regional Policing Authority is governed. One of it is its structure. Some of this is based on what the New-Brunswick Police Act does mandate. So when an authority comes together, the municipalities that are part of such have to have at least one member that is from you guys. One of you has to be on it. And Councillor Jean-Marc Rideau, appreciate your service on such. And then you also, each municipality has to appoint at least one member who is not an elected official. So Dieppe and Riverview each have 2 appointees, so one from, one not from. And the city of Moncton has 7 appointees, that brings it 11. But also according to the New Brunswick Police Act, the province of New Brunswick has to have 1 representative as well. So to represent from a municipality, you have to live in that municipality. To represent the person from the province has to live in one of the 3 municipalities. From there, we have 4 committees for the Kodiak Regional Policing Authority. There's an executive committee, which is a president, a vice president, like a chair, vice chair, secretary of the authority, and the treasurer of the authority itself. Robert Arsenault is your civilian appointed person, non-elected person, I would say, sorry, from Dieppe. Robert actually participates as the secretary of the authority on for us as a group. I act as the chair. James Graves is the vice chair. He's the provincial appointed person. And Nagesh Jumala acts as the treasurer on the executive committee. The treasurer on the executive committee also acts as the chair of one of the 3 subcommittees, the finance committee. We have two other committees. One is a governance/HR type of committee. Not real exciting stuff, but the real reason most people get involved in policing, if you're not a police officer, is to be on the quality of policing. That's where the sexy stuff is talked about. That's where you get to really discuss really what goes on in our community as far as policing goes from there. So an executive committee and then 3 subcommittees from there. The roles of each of the committees, who's going to be on which committee, who's the chair of each committee, who's the chair of the authority, and so on, are chosen by the voting members of the board itself. And that's actually laid out in the memorandum of understanding between the 3 municipalities of how that is put together. So that's our board structure. Just another note just on board structure. The three municipalities would each appoint at least one person that is an elected official from each one. That there's real no discussion between the CRPA and that particular council on who that person should be, but the non-elected persons from each municipality usually go through a skill set matrix to make sure that we have the right skills on our authority to make sure that we're serving you appropriately. A few examples would be always making sure we have a lawyer or two, always making sure we have an accountant or two. I'm a project manager and a management professional by trade. Apparently that's why I'm there. We like to have an HR person, different people with different skill sets that know and understand governance so that we're doing the correct work in serving you and then eventually serving the community from there. Each of the 12 voting members must go through a security clearance process as well. And so that's done by the Rcmp themselves. That can take 3-4 months for that to actually go through. It goes to Halifax, it goes up to Ottawa. There's a fair amount of work that goes through that. But ultimately, you have to be approved by the body that's appointing you. And I'm using the word appoint. Somebody doesn't represent their municipality when they're on their CRPA. They are appointed, but they represent the entire community when we make decisions on the CRPA so that decisions are made holistically from there. Well, what are we up to this year? We've kind of set out 3 priorities as an authority. First one is to develop a new strategic plan. A few people have asked me, well, why are you even doing that? Well, actually, in the New-Brunswick Police Act, section 17.03, it's actually legally required. We are to set out a strategic plan from time to time. It doesn't define exactly what that means. I took it to mean to truly do a full and complete community engagement. And we are meeting with, and as you guys, I think, met last Monday, or yesterday, or you just, or today, you met today. Okay, I didn't know when it was. I knew it was early April. And we are meeting with almost 60 different groups, organizations in our community, boards of directors from YMCA, 3+ Corporation, Chamber of Commerce, the senior leadership from Crandall University, Université de Moncton, CCNB, MBCC, the 2 hospitals, all kinds of different groups to really get an understanding on the needs of policing in our community. I'm getting little tiny bits of feedback from it so far, but the consultants don't tell me names of who said what. So if your worship has said a specific thing, I don't find out that he said it specifically. So from there, but we want to develop this new strategic plan of policing in our community. It is to be delivered. We set a goal of delivering it back to the community in September of this year. We're doing a preliminary version of it throughout the month of May. And then the plan is to re-meet with each of the 3 councils, only the 3 councils, at some point during the summer. Because if we set out priorities, some of those priorities might have budget implications. And as you guys are the funders of the CRPA, we need to make sure that the priorities and the funding match. So if somebody says, oh, we need to do X, Y, Z, and that involves 275 officers, well, that's going to cost something. And so we have to make sure, and we got to do a bit of a delta to figure out what that would be. But out of scope for our strategic plan, We are not, as the CRPA, we are not of any discussion of who the service provider is of policing. That's not our job. So we have a contract with the CRPA that started, sorry, the CRPA has a contract with the RCMP that started in 2012, the current version of it, that goes out to 2032. And there are tiny rumors out there that, oh, the federal government might get out of municipal policing. According to a letter I have from about 3 weeks ago from the federal minister of public safety, the federal government has no desire to get out of municipal policing. So that was suggested as a rumor by a committee member up in Ottawa several months ago, and unfortunately, a one-line sentence made bigger news and repercussions across. We also, the CRPA has nothing to do with the structure of how the three municipalities work together that came together for the CRPA in the first place. That's not part of our strategic plan. That has nothing to do with us. I know that you're aware that the City of Moncton is doing something, I think they're taking the lead with the two municipalities on it's not a strategic plan, but a review, if you will. I don't know the exact details. That's not us at the CRPA level from there. A couple of other priorities that things we want to be able to do here in our community is we want to improve our governance policies, procedures on this work that we do to make sure that we're open and transparent. We're always striving to improve that. But lastly is we want to make sure we're out there communicating more to our community. But it's not, when I say communicate to, it's more important is receive from. We need to get the information back so that we're serving our community in an appropriate fashion. Avez-vous des questions? Any questions?
That's my line.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Question de la part des membres du conseil.
Any questions from Councillor Mrs. Godbout? Thank you.
As a new member of the council, it's always helpful to have a clear picture on what you guys do. I do have, and this is going to maybe confirm if I understood correctly what you guys do.
Yes.
Would it be correct to say then, as we're looking at government changes in municipal governance, for example, that would expand our territory potentially for Dieppe and maybe more true for others, that would be something that the CRPA would be looking at, because they would look and say, suddenly our area, we have expanded, and therefore you would, under the terms of whatever agreement that you have with the municipalities, that would something that would be raised at some point at the table as to how that's going to be administered, looked at, considered. Is that something you guys would look at?
If you feel really energetic on Thursday evening, you can attend our public board meeting, and that is actually a line item on the agenda. However, of what we initially know, for boundary changes, it doesn't increase population significantly. And part of the determining policing numbers is based on population. So although your boundaries are extending a bit to the east and Moncton is extending a bit to the west, I don't think to the north, it doesn't increase the population significantly. But it might be a tune of, we might have to add 2, 3, 4 officers, something like that.
Something like that. It could change patrols, could change other things. So you would be interested in how that would.
Very much so. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Currently, we have 147. We are budgeted for 147 officers, but we also have about 125 civilian employees as well as part of the CRPA budget.
And if there were to be negative impacts of some kind of thing like that, those would be the things that you would raise.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Monsieur Melançon.
I just wanted to add that we are still waiting from the province with the white paper. So this is one question of many questions that we do have at many municipalities in the province. So the transfer of responsibilities, including security of the public. So that is part of the question. And well, we've heard that the discussion will be starting in June. So
I will have the privilege of meeting with the minister responsible for policing some point in time next month, I believe.
Minister Bill Hogan.
Hogan.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So to discuss some of those issues on behalf of the city's association.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Quelqu'un d'autre?
Anyone else? Anybody else? C'est bon. C'est bon. C'est tout? Oui, c'est tout?
How did the session go today? Oh, it's later on tonight. Oh, okay. I didn't know that when it was. Okay. But I think that's a private session, isn't it? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, closed door.
from there. Thank you very much.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Always a pleasure, Don. Good job. And we keep gaining on the schedule. Alors, prochain item.
Next item. We're 15 minutes ahead. We hope to be able to improve or keep this time. Just to say, just to say. Monsieur Richard, good evening. Yes, no pressure. We'll keep. I'm here tonight to present the results of the consultation that we've had about the outside fire and a request from the community and from the city council. They ask us to look at our bylaw. There is an exercise consultation, and they established the ODM to consult the opinion and the opinion of the community, especially about the outside fire and open air that had to do with wood. That was the focus of the consultation. So, what you see here is the summary of the participation. First in French plus the English people who participated. We see three type. We call it visitors in our page. Hello, Dieppe. And the first one, when we talk about conscientious, they're curious people who go to see one page or one tool, survey people who are informed, are those who visit different page of the. And then we have visitors who are engaged, who contributed in one tool or one survey, answered a survey and a question, something like that. So we see a distinguish between the nature of their participation. What is interesting is since we closed the participation, the page is on the website, and we notice there are people who go back to visit. We see that. So it's one of the benefit of having a tool like this one. People can pursue the conversation, the consultation. On the page, we had three special tools. We had the quick vote. It's like a poll, a quick question where people answer yes or no. We also had stories. We invited people to share their stories, their feelings as to what was there. And finally, we had a survey that comprised about 10 questions. Did this thing stars, for instance, about the vote and the story when we say 136 and 46, I mean 46% were registered on the platform and they answered to the quick vote. A quick vote, people that have to be registered on the platform. We wanted to allow the people to participate without necessarily having registered and the distinguished. We had to be registered to participate in it. So we see a survey with only 81 in French and 43 in English. We had to be registered to participate to it. Results in the report that you've received. This question is not the first one, but I wanted to put it in number one, the presentation, because I think that the sequence of the survey, and here it put the other part of the survey in question. What we see here is about half, and those ones to the French are owners of a permit. Only 35%, one third of those who answered on the English are presently a holder of a license. So just to explain a little bit that page, the question on time of combustible of gas, for most people it's wood and it's quite high, and we have the other one. The question other, we didn't know there would be that many. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily have details on that. We were surprised that as many people burned something other than these three. But
Sur la question
on the question of
est-ce que les gens sont conscients qu'il faut
are
avoir un
people
permis
aware that we must have
pour faire
a permit
pour
from
faire un
the
fire
city to have a wood
une réponse assez positive.
fire in
Non, non, bien qu'en français.
fresh air?
Donc,
So,
il
as
faut
much in
faire
English and
respecter
French,
bien sûr
communication can
la
be
certaine
improved and
information, mais
continued
encore
promotion
faut-il
of
qu'ils soient
communication with a
conscients.
good
Est-ce que les gens
number
sont
of people
conscients
know
qu'il
that.
est
Are they aware that
interdit
it's
de
prohibited
faire des bois de chauffage
to
le
have
1er novembre
a wood
et
fire
nous
during
autres, on
November the
n'en a pas.
1st to the 3rd
Euh,
Monday of
Encore
April?
une fois, très similaire en
Once
français
again,
et l'anglais,
similar
il
between
semble y avoir
French
moins
and English, but there
de
seems
gens
to
qui
be
sont
less
conscients
people
de cette
who
règle.
are
Alors, peut-être que ça
conscientious
serait
of that
intéressant, par exemple,
prohibition. That might be
de donner une
interesting
promotion aux gens qu'on
in our
connaît
promotion or
qui
when
travaillent
we
dans des
share
immeubles.
what is being done or what
Et
can
la
be done
question, est-ce que les
and
gens sont
and
conscients d'avoir
are
besoin d'un
people
permis pour
aware
l'installation
to
d'outils
need
sur
a
des feux
permit
TVA fonctionnant
for
à
to
base
have an
de
outside
propane?
fire
Puis
with
peut-être celui
propane or
qui a
gas?
besoin
Do you
d'un
know
permis.
you don't need
Ça,
a
c'est une
permit?
question.
That is a question. Well,
Encore une fois,
so once
il y a un
again,
énorme mais bon, il y a un petit peu
there's not a
d'historique.
lot, but a little bit more
Il y a
than
50% qui le
50%
savent, mais je pense
of
qu'il y a
people
peut-être
know. But there might
vraiment
be a need
d'informer les gens un peu plus que, tu sais,
to inform the
on
people
n'est pas obligé
more.
d'envoyer sur
You don't need
un pot de feu à gaz ou
if
propane
you have
sans
a
avoir une
gas or
première
propane
permission pour l'utilisation.
gas fire.
Il y a une
That's all
différenciation
you
entre
need
les
to
gens
know. There is this
anglophones et
thing,
les
distinction
les
between French and
francophones
English, a
qui
slight one.
le font.
I don't know how to explain
La
it, but
question, est-ce
and the
que vos
question
voisins utilisent un toilette
is
fédéral?
when
On voit
and
ici
outside, well, we see
plusieurs
here
répondants
that
qui ont
a
répondu.
lot of people who answered have one,
Est-ce que les gens ont été incommodés
were
par
people
l'exposition
accommodated
de bois de
by the
chauffage ou de feu en
smoke,
plein air
by
avant le
fire and
domicile?
fresh air in their
Peu de
home.
répondants indiquent leur
Very
comportement
few
nouveau.
said that they
Environ
were
0,5%
accommodated,
des
so
francophones qui ne sont pas des
50% of French are
propriétaires d'un permis.
owner of a permit,
Et environ les deux tiers des répondants à la
and
page
two-thirds
anglophone
in
sont
the English
propriétaires.
page are
Et
not
ici, la
owner.
question, c'est
Was
si
interesting.
on a des voisins
80%
avec feu extérieur
have a
anglophone,
neighbor
ça,
with
ça
outside
vérifie le fait que
fire
cette
among
question n'est
the
pas
English
utilisée pour
fluent.
faire
So that is
plus
validated by the fact
d'émissions,
that
parce qu'il y avait
the
80%
previous answer where there was
de non.
80% that had a
Quel
neighbor.
type de combustibles sont utilisés
What
pour faire
kind
pousser le
of
bois?
combustible I use? Well,
Le propane.
wood is the most
Ça
popular.
fascine encore plus
And
le
here
gazole.
we have more others.
Et finalement, il y a une
And
question du
finally, the
sondage
last question of the
qui ressort de cette
survey. Once
discussion.
again, the
Quels sont les
survey.
gens qui étaient
They're all
inscrits à la
people who
plateforme
were
et qui
registered in
avaient
the
une licence?
platform. They were
Donc, est-ce qu'ils ont
either
fait, donc on
they
peut
have to
prévoir un
register. I
accord
did
avec
favor
le
and
feu
see there's an agreement to
et on
allow
n'a pas
fire.
non plus de
And once
certitude
again, more than
comment ils sont
50% of
éligibles
francophones are
versus
owner
35%
versus
des
only
anglophones
35% of the
qui sont
English
propriétaires
people
de
who
permis.
are owner of a permit.
Donc, l'autre outil, comme j'ai
So
mentionné,
the
c'est
other
d'envoyer
tool,
un
as I
survey
said,
qui
quick
demande, donc dans le
answer.
cas ici, il y en avait deux
In the
questions.
case here,
Ce
there were
sont des
two
questions qui
questions.
étaient les
There are
mêmes aussi que le
questions that were
sondage,
the
mais
same
on
as
ne
the
sait
survey.
pas
So the only thing
si les gens
is,
ont répondu
we don't
oui.
know if the people answered twice.
Dans ce cas-là, les gens
In
choisissent
that case, that
si
they were
d'étudier
registered,
différemment
maybe they
au sondage survey.
decided to register in the
Donc, ce qu'on voit
as
ici aujourd'hui,
in the
on
survey.
avait parlé
Were you accommodated by
en
smoke,
tout cas,
or are you
très similaire à ce qu'on
accommodated?
avait vu
It seemed to be similar to what we saw
dans l'autre question.
earlier. And the second question,
C'est
quick, is
ces questions-là n'avaient pas
and
posé
these
d'ailleurs. Ces
questions we
questions
did not ask
concernant est-ce
elsewhere.
qu'ils sont d'accord que la ville
Would they agree
retire
that
l'interdit
the
d'installation
city would withdraw the
temporaire de bois de
prohibition
chauffage
of
durant la période qui
uh,
est interdite actuellement?
wood
Et
fire,
environ
the
32
prohibition that exists between November the 1st and 3rd Monday of April?
résultat est très
So we
similaire
see
au
that the result
sondage
is similar to
avec
the
un taux
survey
favorable à
with a
retirer
higher rate
l'interdiction
to
pour la
withdraw
durée
the
complète
prohibition that
de l'hiver.
exists presently during the winter.
Donc, en termes de conclusion, il y a deux
So, in
choses qui
conclusion,
ressortent.
there are
Ce
two
qu'on voit, c'est que
things
chez
to
les
note.
répondants actuels,
According to the present
les organisations
person
communautaires,
who
c'est une
answered,
majorité
there's
qui
certainly a
est favorable au
majority
changement afin
that are
d'améliorer la
favorable to the
gestion
change to
de ces
allow
incendies-là.
these
Toutefois,
fires.
il y a quand même
However, there's an
qui
important
semblaient
number that
considérer que le feu de propane et de
seem not
gaz
to know
sont
the
quand même des
propane or
moyens
gas
viables.
fire are
L'autre
allowed
conclusion, c'est
even
que
in
selon
winter. The other
environ
conclusion
80% des gens qui ont
is
répondu
that 20%
au feu
said they
extérieur
were
sont
accommodated
anglophones.
by
Et ça,
outside
on va pouvoir
fire,
regarder
and some,
les
as you've
détails dans le
noticed
rapport qu'on n'a
in
pas
the
pu
details
avoir ici, mais
that we don't have for the public
il
here.
s'agissait quand même
Well,
d'éléments nuisibles
it
pour
was
pour
really
leur santé.
something that could hinder their health.
Je pense que
So
la question
I
et les
think that the
conclusions étaient
question,
les recommandations
and
étaient
I
simples.
don't
Est-ce que
have
les
the
gens sont
recommendation
d'accord
tonight. The
avec
administration can give you some recommendation for the future, what we're looking tonight. Maybe a reaction from you, and maybe some guidelines. There's been work undertaken as to some possibility, and so I think that what we find here is similar to the exercise that was done in 20 something, I forget, quite a few years ago when this became public. We have two camp, those who are for and those who are against. The idea, can we go and find a happy medium? That is the question of the day. So, is there a result of your question?
Do you have any questions with respect to this survey? And my colleague Stevan is here to answer questions too. Mr. Lontaine, thank you, Your Worship. I'm surprised to see that 85% of people know that we need a permit, and only 5% of people have a permit. Perhaps we should have a better system. So, what we said is the people that answered, the respondents. Yeah, but I think it should reflect a bit of the community because a lot of respondents. So I think that's weird. 85% of the people know. Perhaps it's not weird. Or maybe they decided, oh, too bad I'm not getting a permit. That's not what we're saying here. 85% know that we need a permit for fires, and only 5% have permits of the respondents, all of them. If we had 100 respondents, 50 of them have permits, and the other 50% aren't. So they're building fires, they don't have a permit. 85% of people know they need a permit. I have a permit, but I is on the permit, does it say we it fires are prohibited between November and April? It seems I looked at it and it wasn't stated because somebody asked me last year, how come we can't build fires in the winter? And I didn't know because I built fires last winter. I have my permit and I was happy. And then I looked and I can't remember if it was stated. We should check on that. When we give a permit, we also give a copy of the bylaw, and there's a declaration saying that the person read it. And moreover, the ignorance of law is not an argument to not follow the law. Thank you, Mrs. Goodboom. I like to consult the population. A lot of information is very useful. I mentioned publicly, but there's other information that would be useful if you thought it was good. I would like to know how many residents are eligible for permits and how many permits have been issued. We still have a perception that it's a popular activity, and it could help us better understand what is the level of enthusiasm for this activity, if people really love it or not. So I would like to know how many residences in Dieppe are eligible for permits and how many have been delivered. We're talking about an activity now that we think is popular and try to make it more agreeable for people. So who are these people? Because if we want to encourage that, we still have bad situations that come up, and I would like to better understand. So if you haven't bought a permit, that you should not be considered. So I want to know the number of permits issued in Dieppe, and that would be essential to better judge. and what would be the motivation. Jeanette, I want to mention about the bylaw. You see, with the number of participants, but there's also an emphasis on how to improve this activity. And I would like to emphasize how to make it more available too, because now it's only for people who have a house in the right environment. Is there a possibility, if it's an activity that we believe is important enough to improve it, is it something that we want to make more easily available? Or maybe in some of our parks where we could get together and have a fire? Because if the neighbor isn't disposed, then go to the park. We could have solutions like that. So that's another consideration. If we do that, what do we offer people? How do we encourage an activity that some people don't want? And how can it become more accessible to? As we're a bigger community, we have more apartment buildings. Perhaps when we plan them, perhaps we could have a place where they could get together and have a little fire. If we think it's important, then let's encourage it for everybody to participate. Of course, in the past, we encouraged that during the winter, pre COVID, if you recall that period in our lifetimes. On Friday nights, in particular, at the Center of Arts and Culture and around the Oval, people went skating and they would roast marshmallows on the fire. So this is about the same direction that you're going. I just wanted to add that. Councillor Thibodeau, thank you, Your Worship. Firstly, I want to tell Councillor Lao Tang about the permits. I read the results and I read all the comments, and I'm not surprised by these results, but I'm wondering what we're going to do with it. Because for people that have problems, I think it's a real problem, and I don't know how, what we'll do, because if we allow those fires, how are we going to control that? Even at the schools, you can't even have peanut butter sandwiches. Councillor Boudreau, thank you, Your Worship. So it's about the same. People support that idea to allow fires around year long, and they enjoy it. And of course, there are harmful effects. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the recommendations will be to improve the way we will draft the bylaw, because of course for some people these effects are serious, and we're cities, we're all one on top of each other. So would there be uh, a way to limit the time, or one day on and one day off, so that our neighbors don't create a fire every day during the year? Not when it's raining or snowing, of course. Councillor Godet. Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question. How many complaints did we receive in 2022? Do you have that figure? That Stefan might be able to answer that. That's a type of question like Councillor Goodboo asked. Perhaps we'll have to look a little bit farther to get that answer. We'll have to go dig that out. We have statistics of complaints. I don't have the figures right now, but when we go through with management, we'll give you the answer. Well, I'm new here and I've already received a few calls about that. They weren't good. So I don't know if this permit will have all laws around it, like how far away from a tree, for example. So maybe sometimes it could really indispose a neighbor. So on the permit, it'll be stated how far away from the limit. And if we have a complaint, we would know how to deal with it. Because now they build fires in the winter, in the summer, they don't really know the law. Madame Turgeois, just as a reminder, perhaps you've answered already, but why aren't there any in the winter? Why do we allow them in the summer but not in the winter? It's a consultation we had about 10 years ago when it was very challenging. The council was like, you, what can we allow or not? So there was a compromise. People said that in the winter, because the smoke stays closer to the ground, it's harder to breathe. It was more problematic. So there was a compromise by the participants on the work committee. So there was a compromise, and like Councillor Gadet mentioned it, there has to be rules, and that was part of that bylaw, but I don't remember exactly. I thought it was a myth with the smoke. I wasn't there at that time, but I heard that essentially they couldn't come to a decision. So they cut the pie in half. The way it was done, it's non-essential because you complain about the smoke, but in the winter, all the windows are closed, and then you can't uh, build a fire. But in the summer, you can build fires, and everybody is indisposed. So generally, it's obvious, it seems to me. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. So now the next item, summer programming.
On va avoir un été finalement?
So we'll have a summer soon? Yes, programming too. Unfortunately, our colleague Pauline Comey, that should have been here tonight, for medical reasons, health reasons, cannot be here tonight. She's listening to us, however. So Sonia Bobino, who has been working with us for a long time, will take her place.
Madame Babineau, bonsoir, bienvenue.
Good evening, Ms. Bobino. I have a question, but I haven't been here for a long time. I'm checking this out. Good evening. Thank you, Luc. It's a pleasure to be able to replace Pauline. I'm happy to be here this evening, finally, to speak about summer. So at the Department of Leisure, we're waiting for 2 years now for the summer 2022. And as Nick mentioned, we'll talk about summer programming for this summer from June 1st to September 4th. And at Leisure Services, we made a decision. We're going ahead with with a presentation face to face. So all the restrictions have been lifted. So we started with steps A, B, C to Z. So now we've started. So I have the honor to announce that our department, we've hired 12 students to work with us this summer, and all contracts have been signed. We have a champion team all ready to help us with programming and directly with the shows that will take place. So they have a big role to play. And it's important to mention that this summer, the only activities, the only events that will take place at the place 1604 will be Mercredi Show and nature. So I'm going to talk to you about our goals, new programming, programs offered by the municipality, and events that offered. So our goals is for inclusion in the program, the offer of programming, to value sentiment of belonging of citizens and to promote francophony and the Acadian pride for a strategic plan. We're going ahead culturally. So for the new programming this summer, we're going to start with the exposition of old photos to celebrate 70 years of the municipality. We thought it was the best place to choose for this expo in Maison Doiron. So we have a student that is putting this expo together, and it will be available for residents and tourists during the month of June. It will start with the opening of the Maison Doiron on June 2nd, and it's open 7 days a week, and it will be accessible to citizens to see these photos. It will be nice to see the old photos where we have these expos. They're always very popular. We had them last year at the library, and even newcomers come because they wanted to know what it was, what it looked like. So people love this expo, and with the work done by this student, I'm sure there'll be good additions. I'm very happy to say that one activity that will be taking place will be the intergenerational day. It's the first year of the seniors committee in Dieppe organized this day. It will take place in Uniplex on June 1st. We have a class from Satira's school who's twinned with a first year class. So we'll have 17 little friends, and we're looking for 17 seniors to help. There'll be a visit and a little walk and a little meal and a nice evening to share. So we're looking for seniors for this group, and there'll be a cooking classes for kids. It won't be the first. We've had them in September, but this summer we've had courses for preschool and school aged children at Uniplex in July for neighborhood uh, parties. We're doing them in each neighborhood. We all know the mega spectacle country. We're having that on August 26th and 27th. We have programs offered by the municipality, such as community gardens. They're very popular since the pandemic, and this year, up until now, we have 64 community gardens. So we've already gotten 51, and so we're still looking for people interested. There's one at the Aquatic Center and the Rotary Park for 50 years old and older. We're having the second edition at the Parc Rotary from June 11th to September 5th. Transportation will be offered to people who want to go. And in the program, we're happy to have more events and invite people. There were things to do last year, but less with the fewer with the restrictions. So now we'll have programming scheduled. For instance, every Tuesday we'll have events. There will be Christmas in July and Amazing Race. So we're planning all that at the park. So neighborhood parties will be, the municipality will organize five of them, but people can request to have one in their neighborhood. We've only ever heard good comments about this. And at the Maison de Waron, it'll be free this summer, and we'll be there from June 2nd to September 5th to welcome visitors. The Triporteur program will come back in July and August. It started in 2019 and can come back. We'll be prioritizing seniors and residences and homes to come for this activity. Here's our outdoor movie theater. We started last year. It'll be fun this year with more people. Events offered from the municipality. Canada Day celebrations will be at the Rotary Park. The open air theater will be in the community. There'll be nine of them. And this year, there'll be a bit of a change. Five of them will be at plus 1604. We're going to do two with partners, the Youth House and Repair Youth. So the youth from those will participate. Mercredi show will be here for the 35th time this year. It'll start on July 6th up until August 24th. The programming will be released on June 10th. The August 15th party will be at Music Art, and the program will be confirmed in the next few weeks. Or June 10th at the latest. The Veterans Ceremony will be organized here in Dieppe, and we've got a partnership to support them. And this is for the ceremony of the 80th raid of Dieppe. And the International Dog Day will take place at the dog park. And here's a picture of Mercredi's show. So we're looking forward to that again in place 1604. We also have programs for a run, a Kids of Steel run at the Centre Aquatique and in the streets of the municipality for youth on June 25th. And the aerial snowbird shows will take place on June 29th. I don't have any more details right now. And the 1st of July run will take place in the morning, 5 to 10 kilometers. And Canadian Cycling Come will be back again for the second year. And it's an agreement we have over 3 years. So this is ends my presentation prepared by Pauline. Do you have any questions? I could easily answer. Councillor Bouteau, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for this presentation. It's very exciting to have a full summer again this year, and I'm happy to see the new events with the Intergenerational Day. It would be such a pleasure. Perhaps we could have a whole week in the future. With respect to the community garden, you're always at full capacity. What are the statistics each year? Is it pretty well full? Could we add parcels? The first year of pandemic, we had a waiting list and people came. Last year, we didn't have a waiting list and we don't have one at the time being either. We're not refusing people right now, so we're not looking at make it any bigger right now. Councillor Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. Excellent presentation. I would have liked to see more events at Maison Doiron, more than just the visits, because it's a good place to have other events. So I would like to see that, maybe even outside as well, and in the barn, for example. The parties, the neighborhood parties. I really like that because it's a way for the community to get together. There are a lot of newcomers in my neighborhood, and it would be a way for these people to meet the rest of the people in the neighborhood. Other questions? Councillor Goodboom. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you. With respect to music, the Mercredi show, for example, is good, but are we going to see other artists, maybe more Acadian, or is it just Canada Day, August 15th, and Mercredi show? I'm not so sure 100%. I'll have to talk to Ms. Cormier, but there could be a possibility that we could have small shows in the park, but I have to check with her. But it could be a possibility. There's a varied programming at the park this summer. Yes, it'd be nice to show off our Acadian artists. It is a good opportunity. It's our exterior stage that is underused. There should always be someone on that stage. Go to Prince Edward Island and behind Confederation Center, there's always artists there for a certain period of time. So I think it's something that we're missing as an opportunity. Councillor Turgeon, it's a suggestion. Maybe we could work with the Arts Center. Perhaps it's not too late for the summer. Councillor Richard. Mr. Richard, I want to remind you of partnership with the Cultural Center. Tonight doesn't a part of all our partnerships, but this is new for the artistic department. So it's all part of the discussions we're having. Councillor Goodhue. I'm trying to go through everything in my head to see if there's something for everyone. With respect to teenagers, I was listening when you were saying you have good cooking courses for school children, but our teenagers should learn how to cook. It would be a good way to work within the family. What can you do for teenagers? Yes, because just before the pandemic, we had started something like that in the municipality. Since I've been here, we don't do anything directly with teenagers. We did it 93, 94, and we had a survey with them and to see what they were looking for. They wanted a meeting place. So that's how we came about with this project of the youth house. It starts from there. So, programming that is done at a youth house, and we work with them for cooking skills for teenagers because we had a committee, youth action, and they were saying, well, we're going into an apartment, we have to learn how to cook. So it came from teenagers themselves. And it's something that we're working on with Youth House. So it will be them that will do that.
C'est bien. Je vois pas d'autres questions. Alors, merci pour la présentation, Madame Bobino.
Merci, bonne soirée.
Bonne soirée. Ça nous amène au prochain item qui est niveau de service de Forestry. Madame Danfous avec Monsieur Poirier.
This is Delphus. Good evening, Your Worship, members of Council. It's a pleasure to come to see you tonight. Tonight's presentation is one that I brought to the Board of Directors because forestry is the subject of the hour, and it would good to introduce Justa, my colleague on the project, for my green belt that I succeeded in getting recently green belt with a permanent education with Madame Zafa. We'll talk about the work that I done that brought us to the level of service at forestry. We'll talk about the budget. I know you've talked in the past elsewhere. Justin will be here tonight to answer some questions. The plantation of 2022, things that are coming up, and the challenge in manpower. 4-day project of Greenbelt. The one that I chose was with forestry project with Justin. We made an analysis of the level of service that Justin and his team that he borrows because Justin is alone in his sector, in his department. Sometimes we say that his department, sometimes he's alone to a one-man band. He's all by himself. So we made we only have one technologist in forestry. We have no written procedures as to the history of trees. We work with just have a lot of information is in the knowledge of Justa, and we had no written guidelines. When we have no written guidelines, sometimes when we are challenged, when we are being asked questions, or when we are given calls or complaints, sometimes the comfort of answering is not always present. So it gives a better support for his team. So the level of service that is offered quite often is we exceed the level of work that is expected by the municipality. So the result is to better protect our land by giving resources to do the job. It's simply to simplify. This is a map, one of the exercise that we are doing. It's my third version. With the first version, a lot of interruptions from the different that came from different angles. It's in English because my trainer was in English. It's an internal document for Justa, ideally the work to go and work on public land. We have different categories, and that I'll talk about it later on in our park, in our trails, and in our public land. And he will go through those steps to see the work that has to be done to do a follow up with the clients, and the work stop there. Sometimes there may be interruption, there may be calls or things that we have to revisit, but when everything is clear and net, and it's one of the reasons to bring it to the board of directors to make sure that the written procedure, we all agree on the guideline as to the service that the municipality is offering. Some people think we go too far and become service that will be in the private sector that will clear cut, but we have a different version or different vision in clean up, and just that we'll talk about it. Another exercise that we did during a discussion was 3 months of meetings with just and his colleagues. We talk about the changes that was hoped for. It was have a procedure of clear with the support of the management. So this clarifies the expectations. It gives us standards to follow. It gives a structure to the team. It was good to see the reaction following a presentation. Justin and I, the board of directors, they came and asked a copy. And what is the next step? The next step is now the structure of the work, and the comfort is there to be supported. That everybody agreed with the guidelines that were written. Everybody felt better to do their job. Something else that was raised more overrated procedure that's mentioned today to better use the website or social media by colleagues that are listening. Sometimes we are on location or at work, but let's not forget that we should talk about it before we receive the blows, because there is a reason why we are undertaking some projects in a given order. Sometimes we should be more vocal and use social media by looking at the website. We don't have much information at Forestry except the two programs that we have, whether it's the history of our trees, certain plantations were done for a certain plantation with different things that exist, and uh, whether it's the trees or something, we have in the municipality some good information that just has his office, and we will continue to share, and also with the management of complaints through the history and follow up to put more emphasis when we collect and we manage the complaints that have a history, so that when we come back on question, we can use it that way. So I leave it to Justin to explain the procedures that we have or that we have put together. As she said, it was a good experience to work in building the green belt. It was we raised some good questions, and we found the answers that we think will help us a lot operational wise. As for my job, quite often it's five classes and trails, municipal property that will be seen where our trees are on the street, and LPD public use that can be in the backyard, around the tree or anywhere. I think you mentioned that. So if we subdivide the category, quite often we have a playground, we have trees close to sidewalks develop by following the residents or building. So the problem that we have will be the branches. We cut them, we'll remove the branches to see dead trees, and some are transported with our truck. We, we have forests and playground and non-developed territory. And then following some meetings, residents sometimes the trees to be cut. If there is a danger if the branches are there, will push them aside in a territory that is not developed. And too often it goes on. We remove the danger and it will be thrown elsewhere. So we should remove it so that it's not too ugly. Trail in the forest every spring or fall. We have 2 weeks in the spring, two in the falls with the tractor. We go through every trails. It will be a low branch. We cut them, we trim them, and the trees that are in danger will be cut. And they should also, if it's too big for the chipper, we'll remove them. We try to keep a good 2 meters before, besides each trail, if at all possible. And subdivision trails, same thing, branches that cause problems during the snow removals or bicycling people who walk and normally there's no room to chip. So we'll do our best.
Parle un petit peu de budget. Parfois, là,
Talking about the
on regarde
budget
la
of
première
forestry,
efficace par an.
we'll look at $40,000 a year. It will be divided
La programmation
between the community programming, the life, other plantation, and maintenance, professional service. Sometimes their trees are more complex, and we'll hire a climber, someone who is more specialized than us, and there are money set aside for that purpose. So for this season, the 2022 season that's coming up, we are preparing ourselves the residential programs, the program of community plantation. We have 120 trees. Uniplex will have 15 trees that will be planted along the Google Street and a little bit on the site of the inland. The Santo Sam Rotary Park will add a few. The tranquil the trail also try and help the development that you probably know about, and the central also. They were residential and will be there, and between the central and central LGL also to have a buffet for the subdivision behind the arena. Also, we thought of having semi trees, those trees that have 4 or 5 inches following the tranquil trail to help on long term with the reforestation, and also a few trees in Lakebird Rotary Park along the trails, and a few thousand trees that will be planted this spring.
Je pense que toi, tu voulais recommencer.
You want to start again? So, just I mentioned a little bit, but the regeneration of forests is very important in the steps that we have when we talk about trails. There's some places we're putting the branches back in the forest. It's part of our culture not to clean completely, is to leave uh, the trump for the animals for all purposes and to add for the semi. We have a lot of semi available and it can possibly be done where partnership will receive another 2,000 that we have at the bottom of the table. Is there semis that the roads are better placed and Justa is modest. So sometimes I accuse him of talking too much, but he explained that it can be better catch it. We criticize why the small compared to the big, they have a better chance of surviving when they start at a very young age before maturity. So for the recommended maintenance, that includes the 2,000 semi is to water 3 times a week, between two and three, once a week. No, we don't retain that practice here, unfortunately. There's a lack of resources. We have to lighten and apply cortisone. Justin does his best. He has a student during the summer, but what the project is offered by print and they can do certain jobs, so we don't succeed to do it 100%. But we do it as much as possible, and Mother Nature will help us also. In the annual maintenance that was mentioned, 2 weeks in April and 2 weeks in October, when a machine it takes 2 weeks for these 2 weeks, so whether it employees from the Rotary Park or those from Marina, we have to remove to do that job with our employee in forestry. So that's it, so that we can. And we know that our arenas in May and June are now open compared to the past. They were not places that were open. Plantation of a mature tree, he mentioned in one of the table the mature trees that will help to plant 2 or 3 hours of work with an employee, either to localize, to dig the holes, adjust, fill, place this sport barn and the research, the order, a lot of logistic behind each plantation. When the machine is out, it takes 3 to 6 mechanical saw that an employee in forestry. That's what he used a minimum of 2 employees for safety reason, whether it's a tractor or a truck. It's a minimum of 2 employees. So it's only it gives an overview that the support team that is not official most of the time is the work time plantation and work in our neighborhood that he borrows some employees. To the concludes, our next steps are that we did this with the green belt. We keep on analyzing with our colleagues in recreational area to talk about the season with arena with a summer team. We know we want to serve as much as possible our term in arenas as our park in a Rotary Park, and we try to be everywhere. And kind of work are always the demands are increasing. You know the challenge of widenings, but of the widening of the territory, something to consider. So I'm talking for all the operations that are much forestry as my colleagues in public works, and also with the new regulation that is in discussion with Mr. Bruno and that are presently on the way. It was just an overview for tonight to give you an overview of what is being done already and who is behind the forestry. Our colleague Justin Poirier. And if you have a question, thank you for listening. Thank you. Question, Monsieur Brideau.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Thank you,
Ouais,
Worship.
félicitations, Madame
Congratulations, Mrs. Danforth.
C'est pas tous les
Green
jours qu'on
belt.
va chercher ça.
It's not every day that we get
J'aurais une
that.
question pour Justin.
I have a question for Justin.
C'est que je regardais dans la liste
I was
des
looking
arbres
in the list of
vous avez
trees
proposé
that
de planter.
you are proposing to
Avez-vous
plant.
pensé à remplacer les arbres
Did you think about replacing the trees on College Street? On College Street, yes, they're skeleton all the way. Not all, but almost all. They're they're dead. That's one area that we had in mind. Thank you,
Madame Boudreau.
Ms.
Merci, Monsieur
Boudreau.
le maire.
Thank you, Worship.
Merci pour la
Thank you
présentation,
for the
c'est vraiment
presentation.
intéressant. Par rapport à la maintenance des arbres, je sais que vous avez une petite équipe,
Maintenance of the trees. I know you
comment
have a
la
team.
capacité en ce
You
moment
don't have the capacity at this time
est-ce
to
qu'il y aurait moyen d'aller chercher des
water
bénévoles et
everything. Would
créer un
there be a
comité
need
de citoyens
to establish a
pourquoi
committee of
pas
citizens
Dieppe, aller
through
chercher des
dialogue
gens,
Dieppe?
faire
Maybe to get
une
some people,
question qui
have
serait
a questionnaire who would be
intéressée là-dedans.
interested. It's an excellent suggestion. I have a few persons who have shown interest this year. They want to join our team for plantation purpose. Maybe we could include them in maintenance also. It's
Ça
interesting.
regarde Garden
For
City,
instance,
souvent
Garden
ils
Seas,
recherchent des bénévoles
there's a list of
pour
volunteers
enfin
that
faire
come from time to
Park and
time
Pine, aller
and Park and
cultiver
Pine to
des
plant
arrêtés ou des jardins. Là,
fruit
pour aller
trees or
chercher des
gardens.
bénévoles là-dessus,
Go
ça
get
serait
some
vraiment
volunteer would
bénéfique.
certainly be beneficial.
Ouais, c'est ça.
We did
Faire
it before and it
la
worked out
culture du
well.
sud-est, de
The
peut-être
Friends of
directement
Nature in Southeast,
apporter des appuis à votre équipe. Là.
they could support our team.
Merci.
Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur
Thank
Dantin.
you. Should I think?
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Thank
Merci
you,
pour la
worship.
présentation.
Thank you for your
C'est bien,
presentation.
bien de voir pouvoir répondre
As
aux
well
gens qui
as
disent
good to
que
see we can
peut-être
answer the
on va.
people who say
On
that
beaucoup parlé de Dieppe, on
we
en
cut a
parle
lot
de
of trees, but we
200
planted
arbres, 200 arbres fruitiers, puis on
3,200
va venir
trees mature and
leur
3,000
donner une séance
semi-mature.
à nous outils.
It's excellent and it
Merci
certainly
beaucoup
help
pour
us
ça.
to answer the
Question
citizens.
curiosité,
But
les 200
by
arbres matures,
curiosity,
c'est
the
mature, c'est-à-dire
200
qu'on passe
mature
des
trees,
feuillus, j'imagine,
we
c'est pas
talk
juste des
about
arbres, c'est ça, des feuillus, right?
there are different trees. It's only uh, how big? 10 feet. Well, normally we will buy them. They call it caliber trees, 50 meters, 45 meters. The height can be between uh, 10 to 40 feet. And semi is a mix of both. It will be 25, 6 inches, and also the, the time factor costs 25 cents, while the other cost 250 a piece. It's long term, but it has to start somewhere. Start by the seed. Thank you very much. It's nice to see we cut trees, but we also plant them. Thank you, Mr. Goodwood. Thank you, worship. First of all, good presentation. Thank you, Mrs. Duffus, for your project. You had the. I'm glad you concentrated on this project, and it brings a lot of values with the intention to the naturals and everything else. I really appreciate very much that you are involved in this, and also for your resilience. Just to be one man show, as the mayor said it so well, and we will take advantage of it as much as possible with your expertise. When I look at it, management, the next steps, where you're going, and there's one thing that struck me. And what I want to be able to look in your management, natural active, the idea, the cycle of life of this, and the fact that some trees remain there, they have usefulness even if they're not in a perfect state. I see in the procedures that you have here, we withdraw and we tear up. It would be interesting in your document to make a link what we do with the final product, because of the tree, how we use it within the municipality. Do we use it for uh, fertilizer? How do we complete the cycle? I think it's just a matter. It's something that is missing to toughen from the beginning to the end. I can answer you right now. No, quite often, if we chip in the truck, we'll bring it to the operation center, and once we have enough, we bring it to 360, Eco 360, and the, they're an agreement with municipality. They give us free of charge and chip. So we have an exchange with them. I think it's important to have a link, a relationship. I think it would show that aspect, the complete evaluation, and it adds some value. And we use chips also to go around the trails and residents that ask us for chips, and it helps. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Godet. Thank you, worship. Yes. Good presentation. I'm glad that we're going ahead with trees, but uh, Tranquil, you're going to plant 500 trees, small trees. Yes. It's just for the manpower meeting that we have a lot of people. Tranquil wanted to involve themselves, maybe to plant, maybe they could be contacted and you could use them, and maybe they could help you because they are interested in involving themselves. Yes, we've had Councillor Brito in our project. Maybe we could use them again. No, it's something that they talk about. So thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I don't see any other question. Thank you to both of you. And good evening. And don't give up. Fine. Now we will close this part to go in camera. So we'll give a minute, 2, 3, 4, a technician. Our excellent technologists. It will take a 5 minute break since it's been already uh, quite a while. So good night, everybody.
Thank